I hired a woman to clean the house while my entire family was out. About an hour later, she called me and whispered, "Ma'am, is there anyone else in the house?" I froze. "No, why do you ask?" Her next words made my blood run cold. "There's a woman upstairs." I started trembling. "Get out of there right now." I called the police and drove home at top speed. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, know that my story has traveled far. I want to see how far. That day, I woke up with a plan to clean the house myself. I wanted everything to be spotless, especially before the coastal rains returned. When the humidity makes everything feel heavier and dirtier, I rolled up my sleeves, grabbed a rag, and stood in front of the living room window, ready to start with enthusiasm. As I wiped the glass, my phone vibrated. It was Yvette, my childhood friend whom I hadn't seen in many years. Her cheerful voice filled the phone, letting me know she would only be passing through Savannah, Georgia for one day and wanted to invite me for coffee. My heart warmed hearing her familiar voice. Yet and I shared so many memories, running through fields, staying up late, talking about our dreams. How could I say no? But thinking about all the cleaning I had to do, I hesitated for a moment. I couldn't leave the house like that. Then I remembered Brianna Parrish, the 20-something woman who lived in the alley near my place. She was slight, kind-natured, and needed extra work to pay for her college classes. I called her and she immediately accepted, grateful for the opportunity. I gave her precise instructions: clean the study, scrub the stairs to the second floor, and above all, be careful with the old dusty shelves belonging to my husband, Jerome. I left her a spare key and asked her to lock up tight when she finished. I drove to the Magnolia Tree Cafe where Yet was waiting for me. We sat under a sprawling live oak tree. She told me about her life in the city, about her children who were already grown. I told her about Jerome, his work as a published novelist, and my tranquil, though sometimes empty days. We laughed, remembering old times. In the middle of our chat, my phone rang again. I saw the number. It was Brianna. I smiled, thinking she was calling to say she was finished. But when I answered, I didn't hear her usual shy voice. Instead, I heard agitated breathing as if she was trying to contain a panic. "Miss Simone," she whispered in a shaky voice I could barely hear. "Is there anyone else in the house?" My heart stopped. "No," I replied, trying to sound calm. "I'm having coffee. My husband is at the publisher's and won't be back until tonight. What's going on, Brianna?" There were a few seconds of silence on the other end. I could only hear her ragged breathing. Suddenly, her voice broke. "There's a woman on the second floor." I was cleaning the stairs and I saw her. She was wearing a long white dress with messy hair. She walked down the hallway and disappeared into the last room. Her words were like an ice-cold knife in my chest. I tried to stay calm, but the hand holding the phone was shaking. My first thought was that someone had broken in. The house was over 70 years old, but we always locked everything carefully. How could someone have entered? I apologized to Yvette, telling her I had an emergency. She looked at me worried, but I just shook my head, unable to explain more. I told Brianna on the phone, "Brianna, get out right now. Lock the door and wait outside. I'm on my way." I called the police while driving, my voice cracking with anxiety. I explained there was an intruder in the house, trying to provide details even though my mind was a whirlwind. I tried to call Brianna again, but she didn't answer. Every unanswered ring made my heart pound harder, as if it were trying to escape my chest. I imagined the worst, that something had happened to her or that the intruder had attacked her. That day, the streets of Savannah seemed endless, even though I was flooring the accelerator. When I arrived home, a police cruiser was already parked in front of the door. Brianna sat hunched on the front step, her face pale, eyes wide with terror. I rushed to her, pulled her into a tight hug, and asked anxiously, "Are you okay? Did you see anything else?" Brianna only shook her head, lips pressed together as if the words were trapped. 2 officers emerged from the house, one middle-aged with a serious gaze, the other younger. They reported having searched every room, every corner, every closet, under the beds, even the backyard shed. There was no one, no signs of forced entry. All doors and windows were locked, not a scratch, not a mark out of place. Relief washed over me, but uneasiness lingered like a shadow. Brianna recounted again, trembling. I swear I saw her, Miss Simone. She didn't look real. Like a shadow, I can't go up to the second floor again. I stroked her shoulder, trying to console her, yet a nagging doubt grew inside me. The house was over 70 years old, Jerome's family home long before us. Brick walls, creaking wooden doors, dark corners. They'd always felt like they were hiding something. But a woman? That seemed impossible. Then Jerome's sedan rolled up the cobblestone driveway. He stepped out, surprised to see the police car and me standing with Brianna. I took his arm and quickly explained. I expected worry, shared concern, but Jerome only smiled faintly, that rare, almost mocking smile. He approached Brianna, patted her shoulder softly. You must have been tired, honey, and confused the sun's reflection with a shadow, he said. Our house is old. It has many corners that play tricks on the eyes. Brianna lowered her head, silent. My heart sank. She wasn't fanciful, hardworking, honest, no reason to invent this. Yet Jerome's calm, his assured gaze made me question myself. Maybe he was right. I apologized to the police for calling them out, embarrassment bitter in my chest. I paid Brianna, asked her to rest, and promised I'd call if I needed her. 3 months later, I retired. No more rushed mornings, no endless meetings, no deadlines chasing me. The old Savannah house became my entire world, yet the slower pace kept me restless at night. Every night I stared at the ceiling, listening to the clock tick in the darkness. Gradually, I began hearing noises from the attic. At first, faint accidental sounds, small things falling. I told myself it was wind, old wood creaking with weather. But over time, the sounds became unmistakable. A chair scraping slow and heavy, footsteps pacing back and forth. The soft rustle of paper, as if pages were being turned silently. One morning at breakfast, I spoke carefully to Jerome, trying to sound calm. Honey, I've been hearing noises in the attic. It's not the wind. Someone's up there. Jerome yawned, eyes on the newspaper. Just rats, Simone, he said distractedly. The attic's old, full of stuff. Mouse paradise. I'll set some traps tomorrow. The next day, he brought large metal traps, the kind that snap loudly. He placed them at the foot of the ladder leading to the attic, right beneath the wooden door. Dusting off his hands, he said, Now you can sleep soundly, my love. Strangely, the noises stopped completely after that. No footsteps, no scraping chairs, no rustling paper. I sighed, relief washing over me, convincing myself Jerome was right. Maybe it really was just mice. I had been telling myself I was worrying too much. But then strange things began happening, things impossible to ignore. One afternoon, I bought a package of spicy sausage from the local market, my favorite for its intense flavor. Jerome had never liked anything spicy. He wouldn't even taste it. I carefully wrapped the sausage in paper and stored it in the refrigerator, planning to enjoy it over the weekend. The next morning, I opened the fridge and froze. A large chunk was missing. The cut was jagged, uneven, as if someone had sliced it hastily. I asked Jerome, who was reading the newspaper in the living room, Did you take some of the sausage from the refrigerator? He looked up, frowning as if the question were absurd. I felt like trying something spicy yesterday, so I cut off a little piece, he said distractedly. It was good, actually. I stood motionless, unsure what to say. Jerome had never tolerated spicy food. He even complained when I cooked something with too much seasoning, yet I didn't argue. I just nodded and walked away. A seed of doubt lodged in my chest. A few days later, the sausage disappeared entirely. I searched the refrigerator, checked the trash. Nothing. This time I didn't ask Jerome. A cold, uncomfortable feeling settled within me, like a block of ice pressed against my chest. Then, one Saturday, Jerome and I drove to Charleston, South Carolina, to visit old friends. We left early and returned late at night. The house was silent as always. I went upstairs to the second-floor bathroom to wash my face and shake off the day's fatigue. But as I stepped inside, I felt something cold and damp. The floor was soaked. Water seeped between my sandals, icy cold. The floor looked as if someone had just taken a shower. I looked around. Drops slid down the shower walls, shining under the light. My heart hammered. No one had been home all day. How was this possible? I called for Jerome, my voice trembling. "Come here, please. The bathroom is soaked like someone took a bath." He entered, glanced around, and shrugged. "It must have been the afternoon rain coming through the ceiling vent, my love." I looked out the window. The street below was dry under the streetlights. "It hasn't rained, Jerome," I said, keeping my voice calm. He frowned, slightly annoyed. "Then it must be a leak in the old pipes. You always worry about nothing. I'll call a plumber tomorrow." But he never called a plumber. In the following days, the bathroom floor stayed dry, as if nothing had happened. I checked the ventilation, the pipes. Everything seemed normal. He guided me back and I lay down again, eyes open, staring into the dark. For the first time, I began to question myself. Had I really seen the door open? In the days that followed, I tried to act normal. But the unease gnawed inside me, silent and constant. I began watching Jerome more closely, his gestures, his expressions, his tone. And soon I noticed something new. Around 10 each night, when I was already in bed reading, Jerome would say he had to keep working. Jerome had started spending nights working in the study. "I need to concentrate a little, Simone," he would say softly but firmly. "The manuscript is at a complicated part. You go to sleep first?" I would nod, forcing a smile. But every time the study door clicked shut, an invisible distance seemed to grow between us. One night, I woke up thirsty. The clock read almost 1 a.m., the second hand ticking steadily in the dark. I reached for Jerome, empty sheets. Cold, untouched, my heart jumped. A wave of unease ran through me. Where was he? I slipped into a thin robe and stepped into the hallway, thinking perhaps he had fallen asleep at the desk, exhausted from the publisher's pressure. Shadows danced along the walls from the faint light spilling from the living room. I pushed open the study door, empty, the computer dark. The chair perfectly aligned beneath the desk, as if untouched. "Jerome?" I called softly. Silence. I moved to the kitchen, hoping he might have gone for water. The room was empty. Moonlight fell through the window, casting the shelves' shadows like specters across the counters. My voice grew shakier as I called his name again, heart pounding with dread. Passing the staircase to the second floor, I caught a faint, deliberate step. Almost imperceptible. I looked up. Under the dim hallway light, a silhouette descended slowly. Jerome, barefoot, careful. In his hands, a porcelain plate, the kind reserved for weekend dinners. His eyes widened when he saw me. The plate slipped. It fell to the stone floor with a sharp clatter, shattering into shards that tore through the silence. I took a step back, startled. The plate was empty, clean, no food, no grease. Nothing. My confusion deepened. I asked, voice trembling. "What were you doing up there at this hour? I thought you were in the study." He bent to pick up the pieces slowly, as if buying time. Avoiding my gaze, he said, "I got stuck on the end of the book. The editor won't stop pressuring me. I needed a quiet place, so I went upstairs for a while. I got hungry, took some food up with me. I knelt to help him. Our fingers brushed on the cold floor, sending a shiver through me. That hand, once comforting, now felt distant and chilling. I reminded myself, he was under pressure. Constant calls from Mr. Sterling, the editor, kept him tense. Maybe he just needed space. Maybe I was overreacting. The next morning, the house felt heavy, an invisible cloud looming. I woke tired, weighed down with unanswered questions. Jerome moved quietly, avoiding my gaze, preparing coffee with the soft clinks of porcelain, but no good morning. He locked himself in the study, the door firm against interruption. I lingered in the hallway, staring at that wooden door, heart heavy. Near noon, Jerome emerged, dressed in gray and carrying a small suitcase. He paused where I sat, tea cooling in my hands. "I need to go away for a few days," he said, flat, emotionless. "Maybe Atlanta. A change of scenery for inspiration. I looked up, startled. Jerome never left without warning. He always planned, consulted itineraries with me. Why so suddenly? I asked, keeping my voice steady, though my heart pounded violently. Jerome didn't meet my eyes. They were fixed on the window, sunlight filtering through dusty panes. The idea just came to me suddenly, he said, monotone. Be careful while I'm gone. But just before leaving, he turned, hands on my shoulders. His grip was firm, stronger than usual, making me flinch. Simone, he said, low and serious, while I'm away, don't let anyone in. Do you hear me? Especially no one from the publishing house. If Mr. Sterling comes looking, tell him I went on a trip. You don't know when I'll be back. I nodded, but unease settled deep inside. His words weren't a request, they were a warning, an order. About 2 hours later, the doorbell rang. I peered through the peephole. Mr. Sterling, Jerome's editor, stood impatiently with a young assistant by his side. My hand hovered over the knob, chest fluttering. Jerome's warning echoed in my mind, but I couldn't leave the door unanswered. I inhaled, opened it, forcing a smile. Mr. Sterling didn't wait. He strode into the living room, expression sharp. Miss Whitlock, he said, voice harsh. I know Jerome is home. Stop covering for him. We need the manuscript. The deadline was 2 weeks ago. I kept calm, repeating Jerome's instructions word for word. I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling. Jerome left this morning for inspiration. I don't know when he'll return. He laughed, ironical and chilling. Pointing toward our neighbor's house across the street, he said, Don't lie. Mr. Hamilton said he sees the attic light on until late every night. If Jerome's working so hard, the manuscript should be ready, not hiding. The young assistant, gentle-eyed, spoke softly. Ma'am, we just want to help. If Mr. Jerome has writer's block, he should talk to us. We can support him. I tried to focus, but Mr. Sterling's words struck deep. The attic light. I had never noticed it. We almost never went up there, full of cobwebs and boxes. Why would a light be on? And why every night? My heart stopped. I guided them to the door, promising to notify Jerome, then closed it and leaned against it, trembling. My mind raced. The scattered fragments began to align. Attic noises, missing sausage, the bathroom puddle, the notebook, the empty plate, and now, the light. Everything pointed to the attic, that forgotten space I hadn't entered for years. Fear dissolved. A cold determination surged, like a silent flame driving me to the truth. I moved to the backyard shed. Faint light filtered through the door crack, dust and oil heavy in the air. I searched for the old folding ladder, unused since we moved in. Dust and cobwebs clung to it, remnants of time itself. I dragged it down the second-floor hallway, each step weighted with suspicion. Positioning the ladder beneath the attic hatch, my heart pounded, not with fear, but certainty. The metal latch was stiff, rusty. I gritted my teeth, pushing until it yielded with a sharp click, a warning. The hatch lifted. A suffocating damp current of air descended, smelling of old paper and years of confinement. My stomach churned, but I didn't stop. I switched on my phone's flashlight. The cold, white beam cut through the darkness. The darkness. I drew a deep breath and climbed the ladder. Each rung groaned beneath my weight, as if warning me of what I was about to face. The attic was larger than I imagined, a cavern of forgotten things. Stacks of cardboard boxes, furniture draped in dusty white sheets, cobwebs hanging like veils of ghosts. The only light came from a small, grimy window, weak beams falling on the floorboards. I swept the flashlight across the room. My heart hammered as if it would burst from my chest. In the far corner, a small, surprisingly organized area stood out. A wooden table, a chair with a broken leg, and a dim oil lamp casting a feeble, yellow glow, and then I saw her. A woman sat with her back to me, thin, hair long, white, tangled, spilling over her shoulders like a forgotten waterfall. Her dress was yellowed white, frayed at the edges. The soft scratch of a pencil on paper was the only sound, rhythmic and unnervingly alive. I froze, throat tight, words lost. I whispered, Who is there? My voice was weak, swallowed by the shadows. The pencil stopped. The woman turned her head abruptly. Under the lamp's faint light, her gaunt, pale face emerged. Sunken eyes, weary, but with something achingly familiar. My knees buckled. I pressed against an old trunk to keep from collapsing. It was Alana, my sister. The face I hadn't seen in 30 years, except in dreams and faded photographs. Alana, thought lost forever by the whole family, was here, in the attic of my own house, a ghost of her former self. Around her, a world of secrecy. Stacks of handwritten manuscripts, empty cans, rolling water bottles, a thin mattress with a grimy blanket, an old bucket for necessities. Each item, proof of a life in captivity. Alana's lips trembled, dry and cracked. She tried to speak. "Sister Simone." Her voice broke, as if the sound of speaking had abandoned her. Her eyes pleaded for a forgiveness I didn't yet understand. Silence enveloped me. Tears rose hot, burning, and streamed down my cheeks. I moved toward her, legs unsteady, mind spinning. Alana, my sister, the one I had mourned until my soul ached, alive, yet a shadow in her own home. I grasped her thin arm. Every fragile bone pressed beneath my fingers. "Come downstairs." "To the living room," I said, voice shaking, broken. "Come down now." I helped her up, feeling the tremor of her body, her uncertainty, the memory of years spent in darkness. A storm of emotions surged, joy, terror, heartbreak. Why was she here? Who had done this? And Jerome? What did he know? Step by hesitant step, I guided her down the attic stairs. The house light fell on her face, revealing sunken cheeks and eyes unaccustomed to brightness. She looked like a creature reborn into daylight, fragile and terrified. I led her to the living room and carefully seated her in the softest armchair, under a lamp that cast a gentle light over her form. I hurried to the kitchen, filled a glass with cold water, hands trembling, and brought it to her. Alana's grip wavered. Water spilled. I knelt beside her, holding the glass, guiding it to her lips, sip by careful sip. Tears pricked my eyes, but I held them back. I couldn't let her see me falter. She needed strength. Finally, after a few sips, Alana began to cry. Not quietly. It was a silent scream, years of suppressed suffering erupting at once. She collapsed against my shoulder, thin, fragile, trembling violently. I held her tightly, feeling every vertebra through her clothes. I didn't ask anything yet. I simply held her anything. I stayed silent, letting her sob, letting the years of torment pour out in tears that ran hot against my skin. Each sound was a release, a fragment of a life stolen returning to the world. When her cries finally subsided, Alana spoke, voice broken, barely more than a whisper. "Sister Simone," she murmured, eyes fixed on the floor, unable to meet mine. "I never thought I would see you again. Especially not like this." I took her hand gently, squeezing it with all the warmth I could muster. "Tell me, Alana," I said, voice firm but tender. "What happened? Why are you here?" Her words came slowly, painfully, each one striking like a blade. She recounted the night 30 years ago when her world shattered. Darren Albright, her editor, had called her to his apartment under the guise of work. Young, naive, trusting, she went. But when she arrived, he was drunk, his gaze no longer professional but predatory. He tried to force himself on her. Alana fought back, all her strength, all her fear boiling into desperate resistance. In the chaos, she grabbed a small marble statue and struck him. "Sister, I just wanted him to stop," she whispered, voice choked. I didn't want... But the blow, it was too strong. Darren collapsed, hitting his head against the coffee table, lifeless. Alana froze, paralyzed, mind blank with terror. Then Jerome appeared. He had supposedly come by to invite her to dinner. Instead, he witnessed the entire nightmare unfold. "I wanted to call the police, sister," Alana said, tears wetting her cheeks. "I wanted to do the right thing, but Jerome wouldn't let me." He stood there, calm, cold. "You'll go to prison, Alana," he said quietly, deliberately. You'll lose your whole life. Let me help you. For Simone. I'll protect you. I felt the chill of betrayal freeze me. Jerome, the man I loved, the one I trusted, manipulated my sister, my own blood, using me as leverage. He convinced Alana that hiding the truth was the only way to protect me, to shield our family from scandal. That night, under the cover of darkness, Jerome moved Darren's body in his car. He dug a grave in the isolated woods near the Ogeechee River, burying the secret where no one would find it. Then he brought Alana home while I slept, hiding her in our attic. It's temporary, he told her, until everything calms down. 30 years passed. Temporary became decades. Jerome turned my sister into a ghost in her own house. When the police investigated Darren's disappearance, they found he had withdrawn a large sum of money before vanishing. Jerome spun a story. Elena and Darren had been lovers and had run off together. The rumor spread. Everyone, including me, believed it. Alana became a phantom in the eyes of the world, a fugitive who abandoned her family. I stood there, tears burning down my cheeks, not from grief, but rage. Pain and betrayal coiled inside me like fire. I remembered the nights I cried until my body had no strength. Our mother aging overnight from grief. I remembered Jerome's sudden literary fame, the wealth, the accolades, all built upon my sister's suffering. I didn't know Alana, I whispered, voice broken. I trusted him. I had no idea. Alana's gaze turned hollow, voice hoarse. The first few years in the attic? Hell, sister. Fear, guilt, loneliness. Every night a nightmare. I dreamt the police would find me, or worse, that I would be trapped forever in the darkness. She paused, shivering. To keep from going insane, I started writing. Stories, dreams, worlds where I could breathe, where I wasn't invisible, where I wasn't a shadow. I listened, every word piercing like a knife, the weight of 30 years pressing into the room. I saw her then, not the ghost of my memories, but Alana, alive, fragile, and burned by the cruelty of one man's manipulation. Young woman she once was, hunched in that cold attic, clinging to the pencil like it was the last spark of hope in a dark world. And then she spoke of the day Jerome discovered her writings. I thought he would encourage me, tell me to save them, keep them for myself, she whispered, voice breaking. But no, sister. His eyes gleamed like he'd found gold. He said, Alana, you have talent. Write for me. I will be your voice to the world. I felt paralyzed, my head spinning. Memories flashed. Jerome announcing he was leaving his accounting job at the newspaper to pursue writing. Friends and family had marveled, praising his apparent talent, while I secretly felt proud, imagining him embracing a hidden creative spark. But now, the truth hit like a physical blow. Jerome wasn't a writer. He was a thief. He had stolen Alana's gift, her words, her stories, and paraded them as his own. And she, my sister, had been trapped. My own home, her prison. Alana's voice trembled, but there was steel in her tone, bitterness layered over decades of confinement. Many times I wanted to go to the police, she said. I couldn't stand the guilt, living a life that wasn't mine. But every time Jerome threatened me. He said if I turned myself in, you would be the one to suffer the most. That you could not bear knowing your sister had committed a crime and that your husband was involved. He said you would lose everything. Family, reputation, love. Everything. I bit my lip, tears burning. Her words pierced me. Jerome had used both my love for him and her love for me as chains to hold her captive. I covered my face, stifling sobs. Forgive me, Alana, I whispered, voice cracking. I didn't know. I never imagined, she shook her head. Her thin hands gripped mine tightly, almost painfully, as if trying to transfer strength through her frail fingers. Don't apologize, sister, she said softly. I let him manipulate me. I was afraid. I believed doing what he said was the only way to protect you. Her words continued, each syllable revealing a life hidden in shadow. She explained how living in secrecy had become unbearable, especially after my retirement. Before, when I was gone early and returned late, the house was empty and silent. She moved quickly, invisible, always hiding. That's why she had to shower in a rush. Why she stole bites of food from the fridge. Why small traces appeared, like the puddle in the bathroom or the missing piece of sausage. Clumsy mistakes in a life meant to be invisible. All the strange signals I had chosen to ignore suddenly made sense. The attic noises, the vanished food, the puddles, the odd incidents, they were all part of her hidden existence. And Jerome? Jerome had orchestrated everything, turning her life into a ghostly shadow. I thought of his novels, the stories I had read and admired. I had always wondered why they seemed trapped in a past era, why characters wrote letters, waited in vain, lived as if time had stopped decades ago. Now I understood. It wasn't style, it was reality. Those stories were Alana's world, frozen 30 years ago, trapped in a moment of injustice. Her tales of lost love and endless waiting were reflections of her own life, imprisoned within the walls of my home. Alana squeezed my hands, eyes glistening with tears. "Sister Simone," she said, her voice trembling yet resolute. "I can't live like this anymore. I've paid for my mistake for 30 years in this prison. Now I want to face real justice. I want to turn myself in." Her words pierced me, cutting through any remaining hope I clung to. I had thought I had lost her once, and I couldn't bear the thought of losing her again. But looking into her eyes, I understood. This was her liberation, her reclamation of truth. No matter how painful, tears streamed down my cheeks. But I nodded, gripping her hands tightly. "Okay. Alana," I said, voice trembling but resolute. "We will go to the police together. We will face everything side by side." I drew her into a hug, holding her fragile frame close. My heart ached with pain, but amidst it, a fierce determination began to grow, a silent, burning promise that the years of darkness would finally end. A small spark flickered inside me, the tiniest glimmer of hope that, though late, I could still help her reclaim the life that had been stolen. The next morning, I dressed Alana in one of my clean outfits. The dress hung loosely on her frail frame, but at least it gave her a semblance of dignity, a fragile shield against the world she had been torn from. We hadn't slept a wink that night. I sat beside her in the living room, trying to fill her in on the life she had missed. The towering buildings that scraped the sky, the streets thrumming with electric cars, smartphones glowing in every hand, loved ones who were no longer here. Alana listened in silence, her gaze distant, as though she were trying to map a world that had been stolen from her before she could ever understand it. I reached out and held her hand gently. "I'm here, Alana," I whispered, my voice trembling. "We'll face this together. You're not alone anymore." The drive to the Central Police Department was quiet. Alana sat hunched in the passenger seat, her hands clasped tightly, eyes fixed on the passing city like a stranger seeing a new planet. "Everything has changed too much," she murmured softly, barely audible over the hum of the engine. Her voice carried awe, disbelief, and a fragile acceptance all at once. When we arrived, I asked to speak directly with the head of detectives. At first they resisted, citing protocol, appointments, and schedules. But the moment I mentioned the disappearance of Alana Whitlock, the case that had haunted the city for 30 long years, their demeanor shifted. An officer led us into a small interrogation room, gray walls cold and unyielding, a metal table stark beneath the fluorescent lights. With my support, Alana began to recount everything. Her voice, though soft and deliberate, carried the weight of decades of silence. She spoke of that fateful night, the assault, the struggle, Darren Albright's accidental death, and Jerome's calculated intervention. She described the attic, the endless isolation, the stolen years that had built a prison out of my own home. The detectives listened with disbelief. Pens scratched across notepads furiously. Radios crackled with urgent reports. Every word Alana spoke seemed to shake the room, a tremor that went beyond the walls and reached into the heart of the city. The police immediately reopened the investigation. Teams arrived at our house to comb through the attic, to document every piece of evidence, the manuscripts, the food containers, the thin, dirty blanket, the bucket for necessities. a life frozen in time. Another team, following Alana's precise directions, ventured into the low-country woods near the Ogeechee River. Hours later, they unearthed human remains beneath the gnarled roots of an old tree. Preliminary DNA tests confirmed the impossible. Darren Albright, believed long gone, lay hidden all these years. An arrest warrant for Jerome was issued that very day. Officers positioned themselves near our house, waiting for his return from Atlanta. I wasn't present when it happened, but later Mr. Hamilton, our neighbor, recounted that Jerome offered no resistance as they handcuffed him at the gate. He lowered his head, expressionless, as if he had always known this reckoning would come. A strange emptiness settled in me. The man I had loved, trusted, and believed in was now nothing more than a shadow of the past, a vessel carrying the consequences of 30 years of deceit. I hired the best lawyer I could find for Alana, someone skilled, compassionate, and willing to fight for her. We argued self-defense, manipulation, and 30 years of psychological imprisonment. We presented the evidence of how Jerome had turned a life into a cage, how my sister had been robbed of freedom and voice. I spent hours preparing small comforts for her. Clean clothes, familiar books, the dishes she loved as a child, a message that no matter what happened, she would never be alone again. But then, a few days later, the phone rang. A voice, cold and formal, came through the receiver. "Ms. Whitlock, we regret to inform you. Alana Whitlock took her own life at the detention center last night." The phone slipped from my trembling hands, clattering against the floor. My world shattered once more. Alana, my sister, my lost soul returned, had chosen to leave forever. She had faced the truth. She had confronted the past. And yet she could not bear the weight of the world that awaited her. The officer handed me a letter she had left behind. That afternoon, they placed it into my hands. I held it gently, feeling the weight of her words, the echo of her life, and the unbearable pain of her absence. I held the letter in trembling hands, staring at her familiar handwriting, the same I had seen in the attic notebook, now clumsy and unstable, as if she had used her last ounce of strength to write it. I opened it, and tears fell before I could even read the first line. "Dear Sister Simone," she wrote, "when you read this, I will truly be free. For 30 years, I wrote to survive, to keep from disappearing, but I could never write under my own name. I lived as a ghost, and now it is time for that ghost to dissolve. I don't regret speaking the truth. It was the only right thing I could do. Don't be sad. Think of it as if I have finished the story of my life. The final manuscript is still in the attic, inside a wooden box under the table. It is the only work I wrote about myself. If you can, please let it carry the name Lucia Whitlock." I folded the letter, hugged it to my chest, and let my tears soak it. Lucia Whitlock, the name Alana had dreamed of using as a writer, the name that had been stolen from her. I knew what I had to do. I would find that manuscript and bring it to light so the world could know her story. Not as a ghost, but as a woman, a writer, a soul who had fought to be free. The trial against Jerome unfolded a few months later, a scandal that shook the nation. The press dubbed it the ghostwriter of Savannah. Newspapers splashed her story across front pages. A young woman locked away, her freedom stolen, her talent used to build a man's fame. With irrefutable evidence, Darren Albright's remains, the attic manuscripts, and Alana's testimony, Jerome confessed. Charged with multiple felonies, unlawful appropriation of copyrights, illegal deprivation of liberty, conspiracy to cover up a crime, and obstruction of justice, he finally faced the consequences of his actions. But I felt no relief. Jerome had died the day I discovered the truth. I didn't attend the trial. I couldn't face him. I returned to the house, once a home, now a vessel of painful memories. One afternoon, as sunlight faded over the cobblestone street, I went back to the attic. This time there was no fear. I climbed the ladder with a flashlight in hand, lighter at heart, seeking the part of Alana she had left behind. The wooden box was there, just as she had written. Inside lay piles of carefully handwritten manuscripts, yellowed with age, her fluid handwriting telling her story with every stroke of the pen. I carried the box to the living room, sat beneath the desk lamp, and began to read. Alana's words painted our childhood, our dreams, the night that stole her freedom, and the 30 years of darkness she endured. Every page was a stab to my heart, yet also a song of resilience and love for life. I spent weeks editing the manuscript, reading her words until dawn, tears mixing with hope. The publishing house hesitated at first, fearing the scandal. But once they read her manuscript, their voices shook with emotion. This is a masterpiece. We will publish it, and with all the respect Alana deserves. The book was published under her true name, Alana Whitlock. On the first page, I wrote only one sentence. No one should be imprisoned in the dark, especially if they love freedom. The book became a phenomenon. Readers were moved by her courage, her talent, her honesty. Jerome's old works, now reattributed to her, sold again, as a testament to the injustice she had endured. Sometimes I go to the attic now. It is no longer a prison but a small library, sunlight streaming through the windows, illuminating the shelves where Alana's works rest. I stand there feeling her presence, knowing her voice is finally heard. Somewhere in the sunlight, in the pages, in my heart, Alana is free. Her story proves that no wall is thick enough to hide the truth forever. Lies rot with time. Silence can be crueler than guilt. If there's one lesson I want to leave you with, it is this. Dare to face the truth, however painful. Speak even if your voice trembles. Only then can imprisoned souls find rest. The story you've just heard has changed names and locations to protect identities. We share it not to judge, but in hope that someone listening may pause and reflect. How many are suffering in silence in their own homes? If you were in my shoes, what would you do? Stay silent to maintain peace, or face everything to reclaim your voice? I hope you share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, you can support me with a super thanks so I can continue bringing more stories like this. On screen, you will see two of the most beloved stories from my channel. I'm sure they will surprise you. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.